Entrepreneurship is hard, so let's fix that and dive into our heroes' journeys. This is Taking Flight, an entrepreneur's journey, and I'm Sarah Tourville. Join me as we delve deep into the passions, expertise, and experiences of those already in flight. This show is sponsored by EO Atlanta. Hello and welcome to Atlanta's podcast, Taking Flight. I always enjoy doing these podcasts. As you know, I've told you, I think this is my second passion in life. Running Media Frenzy is my first, and doing this podcast is it's probably close to my first too. So it's really great to be here again and to be here with a wonderful entrepreneur who I'm really excited to speak to today. This individual is extremely passionate about his work. He is an entrepreneur, an extraordinary consultant, a leader. He solves challenges, and he's a really valuable professional resource. He is the president of SmartPath, Inc., Alok Deshpande. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I was wondering who you were talking about at first, but fortunately, it sounds like it was me. So I'm gonna have to try to live up to that today, but really appreciate you having me on.
You're really welcome. And these are all facts. I mean, I'm not making them up. So it's like, I've been told that this is the information about you. So you're going to have to own it today. I want to learn about your journey. I really want to kind of understand that when you got started, tell me, like, what did you get right as you first took your entrepreneurial flight?
Yeah, that's actually an incredibly tough question because I got a lot of things wrong, and those are often the times that, for entrepreneurs, we think about those areas that we didn't do well or we wish we could have done again. I think for me, the biggest thing, there's probably two big things that I got right coming out of the gate. The first was I was financially prepared to be an entrepreneur. So our company does teach personal finance. We offer it as an employee benefit to hundreds and thousands of employees. So I had to kind of taste my own medicine, which is to think about entrepreneurship, not from the war stories you hear about, running up credit card debt. And I have a lot of respect for people who put it all on the line. For me, I knew that I was going to leave the world of management consulting and try to start my own thing for probably about a year to 18 months before I actually left. And my wife and I were both aligned. And so we put a financial plan in place to establish the fact that, hey, the first couple of years are probably going to be rocky. We're probably going to make a lot less money, or I'm going to make a lot less money. Yeah. And so, how to avoid that stress. So I think I got that right. And then the other thing I think I got right was that I started very, very small, sitting with the people that we teach. So in other words, I started with a classroom of 6 people and taught personal finance for 4 hours. And then every weekend I would teach a class to the community. And so I learned a lot of the myths that I had in my head were pretty much wrong. I mean, money is messy. Life is messy for people. And so I think that having an appreciation for that, especially early, really helped us establish kind of what this product was going to be and what it's not going to be. And so I think those two areas I got wrong. There's a lot I got right. There's a lot I didn't, but those were the good starting points.
So just if you don't mind me asking, how do you sit down and prepare that financial plan for yourself like that early on? I mean, you don't know what the journey is going to look like.
Well, I think for us, it was, how do we manage a life where we're happy with the least expenses possible?
Yeah.
And I think if you could establish that, at least your baseline. Know that, okay, I'm going to be willing. Is this life okay for us? Yeah. And whatever that may mean, whatever that means in terms of vacations or not having vacations or how many, what that means in terms of kids' schools, what that means in a lot of different decisions that are money related, we sat down and kind of figured that out. And then once we knew what our bogey was, which was, the cost of that life, then it was actually much easier to go out and look at entrepreneurial ventures that may or may not succeed because the number was so low that, it wasn't heavy pressure.
Icing.
Everything was icing. Yeah, exactly. And we also both agreed on who's going to be, are we both working? Is it just her? Is it just me? Like all those we had all those discussions while I was making much better money in the consulting world than I would early in my entrepreneurial career.
Right. Okay. That's really, really good advice. Everything on the top can be icing when you know your baseline. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. It's a great place to start.
Yeah, really good. Great insight. Thank you. So, I mean, you mentioned your wife, and maybe she is the answer to this next question, but who are or were your co-pilots on this journey?
Well, I've had several. I mean, my wife is the one that's been the most consistent over a
Yeah.
long period of time, and we're celebrating 20 years this year. So, um,
Congratulations.
yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. So, that has been a consistent co-pilot.
Yeah.
I have a co-founder today who actually joined me later in the journey. But that being said, I had a number of people that were co-founders or colleagues or mentors that have stuck with me. A few individuals particularly jump out to mind. A close friend of mine who's kind of helped me navigate really the tough times in entrepreneurship, that emotional support, that kind of shoulder you can talk to. And I'm not saying my wife is there too, but you can't load off everything on your spouse when you're an entrepreneur. So, so I've had individuals like that. I've had colleagues that I grew up with that were big cheerleaders for me. They may not be the best people to talk to about business, but they were huge cheerleaders of what I was doing and very supportive of the direction. And so there's been a number of co-pilots along the way. Nobody, there wasn't a specific co-founder that said, "Oh, I started with this person, I stuck with them the whole time." There is today that has been an amazing co-pilot. My co-founder, who's our chief product officer, but beyond that, it's been, just a whole host of people.
Right. That's really good. So what is a challenge that you and your team had to solve recently?
And recently, the challenge we've had to solve is what got us here is not going to get us there. I think that the way I look at that is that we've built a business, and I'll be fairly specific here, where we've had a certain customer segment that we've gone out and we won a lot of deals, and then we've built on those deals, and those deals are long term, they don't churn, and so they have all of the characteristics, especially in a SaaS business, they have all the characteristics of what you want from a customer, which is once you acquire them, they stick around a long time, long lifetime value, they're seeing value of your product, so all of those things are great. However, the market for that is relatively small. So you win at that market and you think, okay, well, I got to keep growing, or at least I'd like to keep growing. I guess I don't have to. I'd like to keep growing. And so for us, the big challenge and real opportunity is what I would call it, is going into some new markets. And it has been quite eye-opening. Sometimes I feel like we could have tapped these markets sooner. Another thing, I guess, I'm a bit slow to kind of decide to move into those markets, but those markets are turning out to be, quite frankly, 10x the size of what our current market is. So I'm super appreciative of the foundation we're on. That creates a lot of stability in the business. And right now, the challenge has been maintain the foundation, grow in new markets, keep moving forward. And we have ambitious plans, just like many EOers. So I think that's been where the challenge has been, opportunity. It's been, there's a lot of specific challenges around team and how does team evolve to that? And how do they change and how do they adapt? So as you can imagine, there's a lot of balls in the air right now.
Oh, I bet. So what is a piece of advice that you can offer others maybe who are facing a similar challenge? Because things do obviously there's constant change in any market. I'm reading Good to Great right now by Jim Collins. Oh my gosh. I read it a long time ago, but I'm rereading it. And so just, hearing about obviously what takes a company from good to great, but just hearing about how the companies which put the action plan in place to change while when the market is changing and not be ignorant. So tell me, how are you going about making those changes in your business?
Yeah, probably two things to your question that jump to me. One is over communicate. I think there is a tendency, or there was for me, I'll speak for myself, there was a tendency to say, well, I don't want to tell the team about things that are experimental unless they're fully baked, and then I'll let them know about it.
Yeah.
That did not work for us.
Right.
For us, it's tell them what the experiments are, what the things you're doing, what the metrics are you're looking at. Let people in on the vision and the direction, even when it's incredibly early. Now, I do think you have to have some responsibility with that as a CEO, to not just come off the cuff and say, oh yeah, here's what I'm thinking today. And it's Friday. And I talked to Sarah earlier today, and now we're going to go in this direction. Right. You don't want to do that because you'll get a lot of whiplash effect from the team. So I think number one is to over communicate and be structured in that communication while you're going through the experiments. The second part, I think, as we're going into new markets, is just don't lie to yourself. And it is entrepreneurs, and I am definitely guilty of this, are very optimistic about any challenge. It's like, oh, I got this. Oh, the person said they were interested.
Yeah.
Must mean we're going to be doing a deal
Yeah.
here soon. Doesn't mean anything, right? So
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything other than they might have been interested.
Yeah.
But very few people have an ability to give negative feedback or to be able to say, I am not interested in what you're doing.
Yeah.
We even struggle, if you think about it, I even struggle with unsubscribing to stuff
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh, I don't want to be mean to that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay. It's just going into spam. No big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But you realize from a sales standpoint, like getting a no is just as good as getting a yes.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
you'd obviously prefer the yes. And so I think that when I say we use Brene Brown in our business, which is we talk a lot about the stories that we tell ourselves. And we train the entire team on this, which is be very careful of the stories that you tell yourself. And I think as the leader of a company, you've got to even be more careful and more cautious about what you think is actually coming. I have made some bad investments in our business because I believed in the story I was telling myself instead of actually listening to what the market was truly saying by the metrics. And so we become very disciplined with following the facts.
Yeah. That's part of the Jim Collins thing, isn't it? Discipline people, discipline thought, discipline action. I was driving yesterday for 5 hours as I did 5 hours of Jim Collins, but like, you're right. That's the, that disciplined thought, because until it's a fact, you can't, and I do agree with you. We are very hopeful. We do believe that we can conquer anything, but reality is you got to look at the facts. I think that's great feedback, Alok. Thank you for sharing that with everybody, because it's, you got to push yourself forward. You got to be optimistic, but you got to use the facts around you. So it sounds like you're trying to do that right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And luckily the facts are coming in pretty quickly and we've gotten a better momentum and motion, go to market motion that allows for those facts to come in very directly. And so, that's helped a lot as well because everyone's aligned with, oh, we got to go get the facts. Okay, let's go get them, especially our sales team. It's like, let's go get the facts then. Great. Yeah. Great.
Necessary. So I've been talking a little bit about books, but is there a favorite book that you're reading right now? And maybe even anything related to this challenge you're overcoming right now?
Interestingly, I don't read a ton of business books. I have in the past just because I have, business degrees and done a lot of stuff in business. The book that most recently had a big impact on me was The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari.
Right.
And that book talks a lot just about maximizing and optimizing for personal happiness. Mm-hmm. And it was so clear to me as I've gone through that book that, well, let me take that back. It wasn't clear to me. It took me time. But what that book did for me was start to disassociate my entrepreneurial journey from my personal self-worth. And I've struggled with that because you put so much, I'm 13 years into being an entrepreneur and you kind of put so much of yourself into it that you think it's hard to disassociate those two. If the business is not successful, it means I'm not successful, right? Like that's kind of the natural thing. And I absolutely still do that to this day. But that really helped me kind of create a different identity associated with what I'm trying to do as a human, for my family, for friends, for my community, versus what the business does, which there's some overlap there. But that I get more into books like that than I do business books.
Yeah, that book, that's the title of that book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari.
Yeah.
Like just, and what you're trying to explain, I'm assuming the meaning of that, like, you can, well, I mean, I don't even want to go into it, but I need to read the book. I think that's what I need to do. I need to read the book and find out, because I do agree with you. And I'm the same. I mean, if things aren't going well at work, you question yourself and you think about, where am I? I say it to my husband, like, I don't feel successful. I don't feel like, what value am I, and you question so many things. You're right. When you got to remember there's so much more than being an entrepreneur. So I think, God, I love the fact you shared that. Thank you.
I had a friend, I thought, Sarah, on like this dimension that I was, struggling with some depression last year and just kind of working through it. And a friend of mine who I'm very close with kind of mentioned, he said, well, I think you're afraid. I said, what am I afraid of? I'm not afraid of anything. Like in my mental, my senses went up to say like, no, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm, warrior type of mentality. Right.
Yeah.
I said, what do you think I'm afraid of? And he said, I think you're afraid that you don't meet your goals and you don't reach your goals. And it hit me like a brick that I was like, in entrepreneurship, at least for me, I set out with this vision and these goals and this,
Yeah.
and you daydream about what this looks like at scale and
Oh,
where it
yeah.
goes. And so what if you don't meet that? Now what? And facing that fear
Mhm.
and treating it as a fear that I need to work on
Mhm.
has helped tremendously in my personal growth to say, okay, I do have that fear, whether I explicitly state it or I
Yeah.
don't, it's there.
Yeah.
I do have a vision. I did spend a lot of hours in college studying. I did go to business school and study my ass off. I did put in all
Yeah.
this work, which is this mindset of something's going
Yeah.
to come out of it.
Something's like,
What
yeah.
if it doesn't?
Yeah. Yeah.
At
Have
least
I
to the scale
failed?
that I think. Have I
Yeah.
failed?
Have I failed?
And I think that framing for me, being scared of not meeting your goals or not
Mhm.
reaching your goals,
Mhm.
has helped me kind of rethink, okay, the only way to address that is to be a bit more thoughtful about my goals and be a bit more varied in those
Right.
goals, and a bit more robust in those
Yeah.
goals,
So
not
not
just
not
one
just make
thing.
them business goals, but make them
Yes.
other, yeah, personal goals too. Um, but that is an interesting point. And I think I've heard people talk about like what is an entrepreneur's biggest fear, and generally speaking, it is failure.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's like, well, why are we failing? There's, even when you're in EO, which is a great organization, you see all these people around you, it feels like everyone is succeeding. And it's
Of
like, so
course.
why am I struggling? Why, like, I do it to myself all the time. And it's like, it eats you up. It can be too much. So you're right. Okay. So the advice there is really kind of like reassessing your goals, maybe being a bit more realistic and not making them just about work, making them about your family and you and all those other things.
Yeah. And your own personal growth.
Yeah.
Right. Getting to that sacred space of being quite, comfortable in your own
Yeah.
skin and your own growth. And that's a constantly evolving process. But
Yeah.
as you hit hurdles there, at least as I've hit hurdles there and I've crossed those, I'm like, man, this feels really good. And this
Yeah.
is a good place. And then, of course I get nervous and, want to reach our goals of business and push hard and all that. But it isn't the only thing that defines me.
Yeah.
And I think that I have to constantly remind myself of that. It's not the switch turned on and now all of a sudden I think that way.
No.
It's a daily practice.
No, I can imagine, because we're wired to think like, well, I'm an entrepreneur. I've given up corporate life or whatever to go do this. I'm going to go do it. And then we look at ourselves as, are we successful or not? And if we don't hit our targets, then we're not successful. Boom.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's binary.
Yeah. Yes, very, very.
You're not alone.
No, I know, it's terrible. Terrible. I'm getting better like you. I feel like I'm definitely little things hit me now. Like I said to you earlier, like even things with my daughter and things like that. There were other, or even just other moments. I always look at life with moments and think like, this is a moment right now, a moment that I wasn't ever expecting. And it's normally a personal moment rather than a business, because there's business, business moments matter too, but personal moments. And I try and savor those personal moments, and I'm just shocked and surprised by how lovely they are. And I wasn't expecting them. And so I take them as little small accomplishments too. When a moment happens and it's like, wow, out of all the, chaos, something really amazing came through. So anyway, I love you sharing that. Thank you so much. So what excites you about the future, your future of flight?
Yeah, I think for at least from a business standpoint, we have what I believe is finally hit that inflection point. At least what it appears when you look at the numbers. Right. We finally hit that inflection point where we have the possibility to reach some of those really, really high goals and objectives that we had when I started. And it wasn't really a financial goal. It was kind of from a mission standpoint. I'm seeing that the mission can be achieved. The how it's being achieved was very different than what I thought it was going to look like. Right. So that has been a humbling experience. And quite frankly, I tell people pretty frequently that a lot of what's happened in our business in the last couple of years is because I got out of the way. I got out of my own way and I got out of the team's way. Right. And when I did that, great things happened. I had to become very comfortable with the fact that I don't control everything, nor do I actually even know everything that's going on in the business. Right. We had a meeting yesterday where I was like, I'm not even sure what's happening here, but all of you all seem really confident about where this is going. And so there you go. I don't really have anything to contribute. and being really comfortable in the fact that, that's just kind of what it is.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
so
hiring good people, surely. If you've hired good people, you can feel confident that they know where they're taking things.
yeah, if you've hired good people and you've clearly defined the role.
Yeah.
So I think in early stage entrepreneurship, you can hire good people and kind of the idea is, oh, don't tell them what to do. They're just going to figure it out. That's on a far end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
You have to define what the sandbox is.
Yeah.
But once you do that, then people can blossom. They want to be successful.
Yeah.
They want to help. So yeah, I would agree with you. Hiring good people, defining the role very clearly. So I'm excited. We've got a lot in front of us. It
sounds really
quite
exciting.
humbling.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching your journey. It sounds really, really exciting. So I want to learn more about you. Talk to me a little bit like pre-flight, before you decided to be an entrepreneur. I know there was some significant things happened in your life. If you're comfortable sharing any of them with our listeners.
Yeah, sure. I mean, pre-flight, I think, so entrepreneurship started 2010. I graduated college in 1999. In 1997, while I was in college, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I, went through cancer treatment, chemo, radiation, all kinds of stuff. And interestingly, stayed in the cancer world. What I mean by staying in the cancer world was I counseled kids. I was only 19 myself. I had attended camps for young adults with cancer. And for about 5 years, I was pretty involved. That unfortunately, that experience, and especially being involved, there are a lot of deaths. Cancer is a very ugly, ugly disease, and especially on youth, and definitely certain types of cancer are very challenging to watch in hospitals what happens. So I watched all that, and at about 25 years old, I decided, you know what, I got to take a time out. I can't keep having this in my life. And it was interesting, an organization that had supported me, Camp Sunshine, which is a pediatric camp for children with cancer. The executive director there was super supportive of me, kind of saying, look, I need to take time off. She was like, go about your life. You've gone through stuff. And now this is my first year, come full circle, where I'm on the board of Camp Sunshine. So I'm able to now give back. And I'm at that stage in my life where I am willing to kind of get back into that world. But that was obviously a difficult experience. But Sarah, as a mother, it was more difficult 10x for my parents than it was for me.
Yeah. Watching your child suffer like that.
Absolutely. There's just nothing. There's nothing to compare to that. No. I knew what was going on, meaning physically, I felt it all. So they had to watch it.
Yeah. And they couldn't do anything about it, really.
Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So
it is the parents. Well, there's many worse nightmares, but I think anything associated to children being unwell, especially at that level, must be terrible. So,
my mom used to sleep next to me. I was on a hospital bed, even in my home, for months, not years.
Wow.
And my mom would sleep next to me on a broken little couch.
Yeah.
I mean, she passed away last year, but if I think about her, I like the mental state. I can finally partially, with a 16-year-old now, I can partially understand what intensity that must have been emotionally to watch your kid go through that.
Yeah.
Oh, so I think about that a lot.
Yes, I bet you do. So I'm so glad that you got better. And it sounds like you had a great family around you as well, which is important. So thank you for sharing that. And I know, and you went on to Harvard as well. So you are someone, I think, who pushes himself. You push yourself a lot, don't you? You've achieved a lot, you've accomplished a lot. And I love the fact that you've pushed yourself a lot, but then now you're talking about, again, thinking about more about who you are as an individual as well. And disassociating yourself. You don't always have to be the business. It sounds like you're just on this really strong journey right now.
Yeah, at the moment, I think that what happened is after I got sick, I became incredibly committed to figuring out what my potential was without using those words at that time. At that time, I was just like, all right, well, I don't really know how much longer I got left anyway. So just go for it. And, that thread kind of carried through the rest of my life. It also did shelter me a bit from significant emotional lows. Even as I talked about depression earlier, which I think is very realistic and real for entrepreneurs, is that I was shielded a bit from the lows because I've had some really low lows and watched some really low lows. So I don't get down into that zone as much anymore. I can kind of identify that.
Right.
But yeah, I was incredibly driven at that time. I wasn't before. I was driven to hit the bar, but I wasn't necessarily driven to go until I got sick and kind of had to take a pause on life for about a year. So I think all those things kind of contributed to just being driven, kind of seeing what my potential is. The same things you and I teach our kids. Just try to figure out what are you capable of?
I know.
What's the worst thing you're going to find out? Is that it could be miraculous.
Yeah.
You know? So that's the same message I share with my son, the same thing he's bought into. It's just nobody's holding you to any other standard than you got to figure out your potential. Yeah, you got to figure it out. And I think we're doing the same thing. You and I and others in the EO group, we're doing the same thing. We're just figuring it out.
Always, every minute of every day. So, and I love it. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So present day.
Yeah.
I want to know more about SmartPath. Okay. So, I mean, I've been in fintech for a long time, so I kind of feel like I'm pretty well versed, but it's such a complex industry, how much change there's been in this industry. So I want to understand, like, what problem do you solve, but also more importantly, what impact have you made?
Yeah. So I think the key problem that we've seen, or the gap in the market of fintech period, is that there is an assumption that people know how to make financial choices and how to evaluate, and I call it broadly financial literacy, but it's adult financial literacy. So for example, a LGBTQ couple that's thinking about surrogacy for their kids. Well, how do I think through that financially? Or should I send my kid to public or private school? Or how do I pay off debt? Should I be thinking of a debt management program? All of those questions. What you see in fintech up until now is, hey, I'm going to give you an app or a dashboard, and that dashboard is going to take care of it.
Yeah.
But money is so personal that you don't trust a dashboard, right? In medicine, the analogy I use is you go to a primary care physician, and they tell you what to do. And then you're like, all right, let me go do that. In personal finance, you're supposed to trust a dashboard. So what we do is we provide kind of financial literacy on steroids. The way our program works is quite simple. We get a file from a partner or from an employer. We segment that file based on age, income, a few other demographic characteristics. And every 2 weeks, you get a list of classes that might be applicable to you. So if you're on the wealthier side, it could be estate planning for entrepreneurs. On the paycheck to paycheck side, it could be how do I make more money? And we get down into even like pulling up Mint and showing you how to use the tool.
Right.
So it gets very, very targeted to say you have got a resource to answer pretty much any question related to money. Now you still have to do the thing. You still got to execute on it.
Yeah.
But that has really, when I look at fintech apps out there today, they even view it as the missing ingredient for themselves. Right. They're like, we can handle the product side and have, numbers flying around and different cards on the screen, but we don't do a great job of educating other than for SEO purposes. Right. So we fill that gap for employers and for users. I mean, last year alone, we had close to 50,000 class registrations. We've done one-on-one coaching with, I think we were close to like 9,000 hours last year of one-on-one coaching. So we're making a pretty massive dent in accessible financial guidance for the middle class.
That's great.
So it's exciting.
Yeah, very, very exciting. I'm just looking at your website right now. I think, I got a feeling I met you years ago at the fintech event in Atlanta.
Possible.
Did you ever have this dial where you would show, it was the software piece and it would spin around and it would show percentage of your money and how you were spending it? Was that I don't know.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I had a company. Well, I had a company, I lost a company. I mean, meaning I failed at a company before that was actually capturing family stories. So it was a different business.
Okay.
But I've been in the Atlanta fintech and tech scene since 2010 and been in Atlanta my whole life. Right. So I'm a native here.
You are a native. So really SmartPath is education. And it's education through seminars, through one-to-one, through group initiatives. And then do you kind of pull partners in to kind of, put systems in place, or?
Well, we actually become the education provider for the partner.
Okay.
So we are a plug-in to their experience.
Right.
And then what the provider gets in return is that, quite frankly, if, for example, if I do a lease versus buy class on auto and you're a bank, you kind of want to know who's going to that class because they're showing intent that they plan to buy a car.
Yeah.
So we provide the data back to the fintech
Right.
around who's doing what and what are they
Right.
engaging in. So they now know from their customers very specifically the things they're interested in.
Yeah.
And we can provide products that are from the partner outfit. So we can drive more cross-sell, we can drive more engagement, we can drive more value that fintech is providing. And then we've kind of seen that play out finally. And so it's like, oh, this is super cool.
Yeah, this is great. When you see that it all happening from one side all the way through to the other and then benefiting the individual, it must be really rewarding.
Yeah, and I've kind of figured that it's the intersection of financial education with marketing for fintechs.
Yeah.
It is it's like content marketing on steroids, with the content being, we have classes every single day. We teach multiple classes a day. So we're extensive in our library of what we do in a live setting. And in every live class, there's a financial advisor answering everyone's question in the chat room.
Wow. And
so
those are SmartPath financial advisors? Yeah.
So they're just answering questions. We don't sell any financial products. We don't manage your money for you. We're not trying to turn you into some policy. Nope. No. It is 100% objective. So it's finally kind of found its maturation and space in the market that is allowing us to really just grow a bit faster than we ever have.
I can hear that. I can hear the differentiation of the solution. It sounds great. And being in marketing, I'm all about that. Like, how do you differentiate? What's your story? So and you explained it well. So thank you for that.
You got it.
Okay, bonus round. We have time. I want to know more about you. Like, what do you do outside of work?
Well, as you know, I'm fairly tied up with a teenager who we have a year and a half before we're empty nesters. So there's he runs track and cross country. So I'm at every single meet and try to get to even some of the practices. I play golf. I enjoy it. I'm actually in the EO golf group, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And between that and then honestly, spending time with my wife, I don't do much else. I wish I were to say that I've got some fascinating hobby. I do work a lot. And I don't say that like as some badge, but it's just the reality of where we are right now in the business. So I am spending a lot of time traveling too, not necessarily personally, although I'll be going to India next month. So my days are quite consumed, and looking for downtime is a challenge. But I enjoy it. I'm like, hey, get it while the good, while the things are going good, and go ahead and get it and see what happens.
No, I agree with you. I agree. You seem happy and well-rounded. It's like, again, I think keeping a pulse, when you're working too much, pulling back. And I think it's good if we have to realize that about ourselves. So it feels like, to me, I know I don't know you too well, but I feel like you're trying to get that. So I think that's wonderful, while also growing what looks to be a really, really strong business. I'm excited to watch SmartPath's growth too. So thank you. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'd love to be able to share, how can people connect with you? Maybe you can share, what's the best way?
Yeah, you can email me, alok@joinsmartpath.com, alok@joinsmartpath.com. So feel free to email me with, whatever. And typically I'm around and try to stay involved. I haven't been to as many EO events. I'll get to some more, but try to stay as involved as I can. But I'm not too hard to find. And I would like to think, at least what others tell me, is I'm fairly generous with my time. If I can find time for 15 minutes and somebody wants to just chat, I'm happy to do it. Because people did that for me. Yeah. And so there's no reason not to do that. So I will try to find the best time I can. But feel free to reach out anytime.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful. So, thank you so much again, Alok, for joining us. I've really, really honestly enjoyed the conversation. It's been such a nice mix of business and personal, and I'm hoping our guests got a nice experience of getting to know you a little bit better.
You got it. You got it. Sarah, thank you for everything you're doing. Really appreciate it.
You are welcome. And thank you to our audience. If you learned something today, maybe we made you laugh. I don't know. Please tell someone about this podcast. We love doing this. I find it amazing. I'm getting comments from people quite regularly telling us like they're listening to every show, they're learning something, and it's like, oh my gosh. And sometimes I just think I'm doing this because I'm enjoying it. So knowing that we're actually really helping you, our listeners, this means everything to me. So thank you. Please keep listening. Please keep subscribing. Share this with your network, because we want to grow this beyond Atlanta, and just get the best of the best to share their stories. And so again, thank you, Alok, for joining us. This has been another exciting episode of EO Atlanta's Taking Flight, and I really look forward to seeing everybody next time. And so that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at takingflight.live. For more information about EO Atlanta, visit eoatlanta.org. Special thanks to the following sponsors: